Hello and welcome to this week's free episode of Trashfuture.
It's the free one.
It is in fact the free one.
Riley isn't here to get mad about it.
He can't get mad.
I feel like I can't do voices, so I'm going to sub for Riley when I'll be like, can you not do any voices, please?
It's the free one.
It's
the free
I'm
so
one.
stressed.
We're doing Riley's Jordan Peterson. Can everyone stop saying it's the free one? I find it quite alarming.
I'm so stressed that he's doing voices, so I'm going to go eat this raw meat with some salt and then have some inappropriate thoughts about my daughter.
Riley would do that apart from the daughter thing. Riley would never have a child.
If you told him that the raw meat was like, you know, artisanal.
It's keto.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I'm going to go for a really fancy meal to like calm my anxiety.
It's a Michelin-starred restaurant that serves you raw meat and benzodiazepines. The wait list is like a year.
Yeah, setting up a restaurant that exists chiefly as a trap for Riley personally.
Riley's eating only beef carpaccio at the Michelin-star restaurant for reasons of gains. But then he's also washing it down with like 8 bottles of wine.
You know, like in the Looney Tunes when they sort of like, you know, you had the Roadrunner who like paints the fake tunnel.
Yeah.
We'll do that, but we'll do it for like
a small plates restaurant.
It's a small plates restaurant called like Zing or something. I don't know.
Taken in by a trompe l'oeil painting of Le Gavroche on a cliff face.
Yeah, exactly. Just very frustratedly reaching out, trying to grab the oysters from the plate.
Trying to eat a big plate of oysters that I've disguised a landmine to look like.
Tantalus Brackets podcast.
Yeah, no, it could be. What we'll do is we'll go to like we'll paint like a we'll paint like an exact replica of like the Nighthawks, the Hopper image.
Yes.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, but they do small plates bar food in there now. Like the barman has like a full sleeve tattoo.
Yeah, they just like they're looking like they're having a great time. There's a woman like dressed in a cocktail dress, like looking disapprovingly. It's
they're all wearing Alcatraz prison uniforms.
But she's covered in stick and poke tattoos. And she has what I can only describe as an ill-advised dye job.
Haircut she did herself. Yeah.
Just as a side note, I was walking through East London the other day and I saw the Alcatraz, like the kind of like a bar experience thing.
Brick Lane's finest.
Yeah, and it's right opposite, like not just one but two of the Jewish like bagel shops, famous bagel shops. Like I was disgusted when I first heard about it, but I'd never seen it before. And like when I saw like what it was opposite of, it was just like, come on, like I like, why wouldn't you think about anyway? I just wanted to add that.
I mean, to me, it's actually, it feels like it makes a lot of sense. You either observe kashrut or you go to jail. So, you know. So today we were going to talk about an article Riley found about a startup that is called, and I am not joking, Nate.
Oh.
He's with us even in our thoughts.
This is correct.
How are we spelling Nate? Is it just like your name?
Nate.
Wow,
it's my name.
Okay.
It's my name. So this is an interesting article, and it's gonna take
a pitch to investors.
It's gonna probably take the full episode to go through it, but I want to read this paragraph by paragraph. A, because I am lazy, if nothing else, but B, because I feel like so much of the details in here are like real life versions of jokes we've made, and I think in totality it just kind of like summarizes the extent to which the startup tech economy, all of the valuations involved and the services provided are completely fake. And specifically, it harkens back to what we thought was a throwaway bit. What if your robot was just a guy? This is one of the better examples, perhaps even more than the bot, you know, the robot delivering your food being piloted by the guy in Colombia. This is an example of AI that is 100% just a guy. So I'll start from the top. Some startups are bold and original.
This is not one.
And some, like Nate, had more modest goals, automatically filling out shoppers' contact and payment information on retailers' websites. In exchange for sparing them a minute or two of data entry on their phones, Nate charged shoppers $1 per transaction.
I didn't know you were up to all this.
I
in
know.
your spare time,
I'm just
you know?
always doing shit. You know, if I'm not producing literally every podcast, I'm doing this too.
This is from an article on The Information, by the way. I can't remember who wrote it. But
We will link to the article in the show notes since we are fully pulling from this article. But like I said, I feel like
it's correct as a leftist to make $1 off of every time someone's too lazy to write in their own name.
I don't know. I mean, I thought about it a lot, but I realized that if I charged more than $1, I would just want to open a small plates restaurant, and that would also not be around after communism. So,
yeah. Have the people paying for this ever considered using Google Chrome?
Or as you will discover, many other services that also do this more easily. But let's get through this. But it struggled to turn even that vision into reality. While the company said it was using artificial intelligence to populate customer information during the checkout process, it had actually hired workers in the Philippines to manually enter the data on retailers' sites for a significant portion of the transactions Nate facilitated in 2021.
God.
Meaning to two people with direct knowledge of, or according to two people with direct knowledge of the company's practices. That meant customers' orders were sometimes placed hours after they clicked the buy button through the Nate app. Nate didn't disclose its decidedly low-tech methods to at least some of the investors from whom the startup tried to raise money, according to a person with direct knowledge of fundraising discussions.
Yeah, I'm starting an AI, and instead of all of the other guys who like start an AI that doesn't work or just do nothing, they go to the Philippines to open a data entry sweatshop.
So basically, yes, because they couldn't figure, as you'll discover as this goes on, there's a reason why an automated function was unable to achieve its goals based on sort of e-commerce safety protocols. And so they decided to circumvent it by just having people in the Philippines making way less money, manually entering the orders for people so they didn't have to type their own names.
That must be the most depressing job in the world, by the way.
I would say it's hard to overstate the extent to which workers in the Philippines get exploited in the tech economy. I think the combination of the fact that the Philippines was fully a U.S. colony and English is widely spoken there, and the fact that wages are so low means that tech companies outsource some of their absolute worst stuff for their English-speaking audiences to the Philippines. There's a great Adrian Chen article, I believe, in Wired from a couple of years back about how all of the content moderation for Facebook is done by people in the Philippines, and like this left people horrendously traumatized because they were basically the human shield between your Facebook feed and, you know, videos of stuff like animal murder, you know, child sex abuse, stuff like that being
Filipino
uploaded.
Guy doing the tears in rain speech, but about how many Minions memes he's seen.
I mean, like really, really hideous stuff, and you know these people were being paid.
We know this. Unmoderated, the English psyche is entirely posting videos of like cat torture and ISIS beheadings.
And much worse stuff than that I won't share, you know, in the interest of this not being
ISIS.
So I'll continue in this article.
Meowing the shahada. It's like attempt to saw a guy's head off with a bar knife that I'm holding clumsily between two paws.
Oh, adorable.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, that sounds really bad.
Adorable King Militant. Everyone's like, oh,
I can't. Basically, you're describing a meme called "I Can Has Caliphate."
That's right.
Still, Nate has landed backing from well-known venture capital firms, including Coachu Management and Forerunner Ventures, who collectively invested more than $50 million in the startup in the past 2 years. Transaction volumes never took off, and late last year, Nate offered a juicy promotion to get people to make purchases through the app. New customers could receive $50 to spend at select retailers like Best Buy and Walmart. But the move backfired when users discovered they could create multiple accounts, launching a feeding frenzy to collect the free cash, said two people with direct access to an internal transaction data dashboard.
We accidentally gave everybody the infinite money cheat, but only for Walmart purchases.
Customer orders surged during the promotion, but tumbled back to pre-promotion levels when the company ended it around Christmas, these people said.
Wait, but so hold on. You have to order this through the app, right?
So the best way I could describe it is: have you ever seen the things like Buy or some of the ones that let you buy stuff from Japanese retailers, but through a sort of translation service?
Sure, AliExpress.
It's basically
stuff like that,
yeah. It's basically that, but for any kind of e-commerce thing that's already in English, it's already based in the country you're in this case in the United States, just because it would effectively let you log in with your account and then never have to enter in your personal data.
Okay, so if you tell that app all of your details, if you tell them your name and your address and your postcode or zip code or whatever, why did they claim to need an AI to do this?
Well, I think the issue here is, as the article gets into it, so I'll just continue reading in a second. But the quick summary is basically that because most of these e-commerce sites are set up to avoid what they feel, what we presume to be bots or crawlers, and so as a result, like the function of getting to the click your basket, click your order, submit your information thing, like it couldn't be automated in one size fits all in general because it's different in terms of layout and staging on every site. And then also because when they tried to automate it using bots, like the sites basically sort of rightly were like, wow, this is clearly a fucking bot, and basically blocked the transaction or blocked their connection. So I'll keep going.
But then also I think what I'm struggling to get my head around here is that there are just like any web browser just does this for you anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you definitely can save your card information and your profile on...
why would you need an AI to recognize that in a field marked name, you put the name that you already have, that you put in to order a bunch of other stuff before?
But you're also going to find this very, very funny, as many people in the US and also in the UK will probably know, there's already this service called Stripe that works, or Shopify that also works for that, if you want to go that route, that already pre-fills stuff for you. So, and that's an API, I think, that, you have an account and then the website is sort of set up to interface with it and handles it for you. So
also,
once again, my namesake, not fucking doing a lot of good right now.
It takes like a minute to type in your name and address.
But is a minute worth $1 to you to make an AI or someone in the Philippines do it for you, Alice?
Alice, consider your grind set.
That's
How
true.
much money could you have made in that minute? How much crypto could you have traded?
Yeah,
How many Richard Scarry books could you be reading at this moment in order to be reading 52 books a month? Like,
yeah.
In the time that it takes me to put in my name and address, I could have recorded a minute of podcast, which would remunerate me to the tune of millions of dollars.
That's right. You call this a busy town, and yet this worm doesn't even get up at 4 a.m.
All right. One consequence of the pandemic-fueled shopping boom is that venture capitalists, facing fierce competition for deals and paranoid about missing the next Stripe, began practically hurling money at all startups that promised to make e-commerce smoother, even ones with questionable business models or technology.
This speaks to a sort of a bigger problem with VC, right? Which is that we've just articulated what VC does, which is you throw a shit ton of money at everything in the hopes that you hit something that's very successful. But they have this like thing where they throw good money after bad, where if something is successful, they go, oh, okay, well, clearly what everyone needs is another 50 of the startup that does the same thing, just in case one of those is also equally successful.
Yeah, and I mean, also, I think that you'll get. Actually, let me continue on, because I feel like there's a couple of things that references they make to how these businesses grew in like the sort of Web 1.0 e-commerce phase. But obviously, like, there's not going to be that kind of exponential growth anymore unless there's a massive change in the technology, which hasn't happened yet. So I'll continue. Today, amid slowing e-commerce sales and macroeconomic challenges, many startups like Nate face a reckoning. Quote, across the startup landscape, there's this realization that a lot of companies had a great story, but their reality wasn't, says Keval Desai, an investor at Interwest Partners who previously backed e-commerce firms such as The Real. Great name. People are waking up and saying these valuations cannot be sustained. You fucking think.
The economy's real again. Fuck. Shit.
Oh, shit.
Shit. As venture investor sentiment sours, payment startups and established companies such as PayPal are laying off staff and taking other measures to preserve cash. Stripe backed Fast, a one-click checkout startup that had around 450 employees despite generating almost no revenue, was among the first startups to implode after a series of reports in the information detailed its profligate spending. Another one-click checkout startup, Bolt, this year attained an astounding valuation of $11 billion, the equivalent of nearly 400 times its revenue, before growth hit a wall. It laid off hundreds of people last month after putting a fresh fundraising effort on ice.
What were these hundreds of people doing for these companies? Was this just sort of like a Huey Long, like universal basic income by means of corruption thing?
I genuinely...
Chief vibes officer, beanbag coordinator.
Slide tester.
Yeah.
So continuing on, bigger companies like Shopify, which already have relationships with millions of merchants, easily replicated the technology Fast and Bolt developed. Nate's model of charging shoppers set it apart from Fast and Bolt, which charge merchants. But Nate's app, which also offers features that allow users to send gifts and take out small loans to make purchase, just didn't catch on or work as intended in many cases.
So it was trying to do Klarna shit as well.
Yeah.
Okay, right, yeah. Who are also going bankrupt or are laying off a bunch of
Yeah,
people.
they're laying off lots of people, apparently. Based in New York and founded in 2018 by fashion entrepreneur and former Amazon employee Albert Saniger, Nate describes itself as an artificial intelligence startup with an app that allows iPhone shoppers to make a purchase from any retailer's website with a couple of taps, quote, like magic, unquote. When shoppers see something they want on a mobile retail website, they can click the browser's share button to open the Nate app and then just click buy in the app. Let the machines do the heavy lifting of completing the order, Nate's website says.
The heavy lifting. Filling out your name and address on a web form. I love what small beans the modern world has turned people into. Like, I can't type out my name and address. It's too hard.
So I'm on the CEO's Twitter page right now. His profile picture is himself hugging his own knees, wearing like denim turn-ups and boat shoes, which is in itself very funny.
Very nice.
Optimist, dad, spouse, CEO of Nate.
So apparently, to summarize one of the paragraphs, apparently they were at one point valued at $307 million, and they had 150 employees who were mostly based here in London. So very... no idea how, why.
Lending weight to my theory that this is all your secret side hustle.
Exactly.
That's where Nate is on Wednesdays.
Exactly. On Wednesdays, I don't come into the office because I have to go to my other office, the most expensive suite in the Shard, where I have all these dudes basically like outsourcing purchases to the Philippines.
Yeah, Nate's got like Dr. Weeto hair sitting on like a desk high above them all, yelling to work harder as like lightning bolts kind of like strike the ground around him.
Nate's doing so much Pride Month stuff, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I presume you mean the app, because for me it would just be my commitment to Pride Month is liking a tweet with a dog standing on the table, and
Nate the app has been liking a lot of homophobic dog posts.
But to process transactions automatically on retailer sites without the aid of humans, Nate's software needed to figure out how to locate specific buttons on the page, such as the one that adds an item to the shopping cart, without being blocked by trackers on the site that look for automated bots, said two people with direct knowledge of the technology. That proved difficult. As a result, throughout 2021, the share of transactions Nate handled manually rather than automatically ranged from 60 to 100%, according to people who had direct access to internal data from Looker.
So there was theoretically some technology going on here. It's just it didn't work, so they just faked it with guys?
Yes.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So basically, they were foiled by this incredible, inscrutable technology called website design and click button, and as a result, they had to outsource all of the things where you're pushing the magic button to get your order processed, 1 minute faster for $1 to people in the Philippines who would do it manually. And as it said earlier in the article, this could sometimes create a delay of hours for your order because they had to go through and locate the information and type it in for you.
I'm the UX person at eBay who every day moves the shopping cart button by 1 pixel, effortlessly defeating whatever software they've developed.
Guy in the Philippines making $2 an hour, having to process your third order this week for $500 of Gamer Girl bath water. Just like rubbing his temples as he does it.
Oh my God. That's a horrifying thought that like a human might have to supervise any of your dumb online purchases.
Yeah, no, those are between me and God.
That's right.
It says employees at Amapta, an Australian-owned offshore staffing company, handled most of the manual work in the Philippines, these people said. A job posting from last year shows Amapta was hiring purchasing assistants, in quotes, to enter online purchases that, per the posting, had failed in Nate's system. Noor Sakali, a Nate spokesperson, said the 60 to 100% range was incorrect and the claims questioning our proprietary technology are completely baseless.
May I see the proprietary technology?
No. We continue to be laser...
It's actually 100%. It's not a range at all.
We continue to be laser focused on our upward trajectory of growth while remaining
laser focused,
customer service obsessed as we continue to build Nate as a one-stop shop for e-commerce.
It doesn't get more obsessive in your customer service than hiring a Filipino person to do the customer service for you.
Yeah. That sounds like a Tumblr account, customer service obsessed. Would post lots of sassy memes about working in retail.
Potential name alert. Inga Zwick, an Impata representative, said the firm was proud to work with Nate.
Didn't think we'd come across a better name than the one we already had. But
the one which I cannot say because I'm so embarrassed.
And if you spoonerize it, it's even worse.
Yeah.
To Nate's credit, during the first... That's right. To my credit. To Nate's credit, during the first quarter of this year, the company improved its software to be able to automate more transactions, but Nate still struggled overall to overcome bot detection and other technical issues across many major retailers, the two people with knowledge of the technology said. Of course, Nate presented a rosier picture of its technology at a meeting in early March. There, Sanagar was trying to attract investors using hedge fund Gladebrook Capital Partners, which previously backed companies such as Uber and Lyft when they were privately held, for a potential $70 million Series B round at a $700 million.
$70 million more dollars, and we will be able to make it hit the fucking shopping cart button most of the time.
That's right.
For a potential $70 million Series B round at a $700 million valuation, according to a person with knowledge of the episode. Sanagar wanted to demonstrate how quickly its AI-driven software could process transactions. When Paul Hudson from Gladebrook went to order a pair of Levi's from the denim maker's website using Nate's checkout, that triggered a notification in a corporate Slack channel Sanagar set up called VIP Notifications for Albert to alert colleagues that a transaction needed processing right away, according to a Slack message viewed by the information. The team then told the Impata workers to process
the less popular sequel to Flowers for Algernon.
The team then told the Impata workers to process the sale, said two people with direct knowledge of the incident. The Impata workers started the transaction, but when they were unable to add the size of jeans that Hudson wanted to order, Nate's engineers jumped in to add the item to the cart and complete the purchase, according to two people with the knowledge of the incident and Slack messages viewed by the information.
This is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. It's such a little microcosm of how so much VC shit works. Is some idiot goes, "Oh, can I get a 4628 gene, please?" And then this sets off this chain of people screaming at each other in a Slack channel across 4 different countries. It's like
4628 gene, a man who's built like the MF Penguin.
I mean, it's killing me too, because like this whole thing basically seems like dumb startup guy steamed hams incident.
Yes.
Like it's just as you said earlier, may I see them? No. Like it just continues to the point where
the secret ingredient, it's just fraud, and really, really low-end fraud.
Legally, we cannot say that it's fraud.
They claim that this never happened, but the journalists involved have in fact seen the messages and stuff. So this is very funny. I'll continue. Nate joins a long list of software startups that have exaggerated their AI capabilities, you think. 6 years ago, several developers of automated chatbots secretly employed many humans to handle customer queries. Later, some now defunct self-driving vehicle startups privately claimed their AI safely automated cars or trucks, but that wasn't the case. More recently, Scale Factor, which claimed to be an AI-powered accounting service, shut down after the pandemic began. Forbes then reported that the startup used Philippines-based contractors to do some of the work it claimed was automated, similar to how Nate was operating.
The thing is, right, most of these companies that are claiming to use AI to do something and then they're just using a guy to do it, it's because getting an AI to do that is very difficult. Or like it would be like a pie in the sky thing, like like a self-driving car or whatever.
Yeah.
But in this case, there's literally non-AI solutions to it, but which are still automated, which work more or less perfectly. Like just browser extensions that just do this without AI, but without
reasoning. It's like
guts.
reasoning to it backwards, right? Because all of those things that put a big cardboard robot suit on a Filipino guy to try and like solve some intractable problem like a self-driving car, right? Because those are solving like intractable problems, even though they're not solving them, that makes them the way of the future, and that makes them the thing that gets big VC funding. Therefore, if you want to get big VC funding, you have to put the big cardboard robot suit on a guy, regardless of what you're having him do.
Yeah. We've put the big Apple Safari in 2006 suit on this Filipino guy to demonstrate our impressive AI.
This also gets very funny because when you think about some of the figures we've heard about valuations, seed money, etc. So it says, apart from technology issues, Nate also faced challenges appealing to consumers. In the first few months of its launch, Nate struggled to get shoppers to use the app after downloading it because they couldn't use it to browse for products. Shoppers could only use the Nate app after first identifying a product they wanted from browsing a retailer website and then sharing that product page with the Nate app. And because Nate has largely handled transactions manually, users can only buy one item at a time, according to 3 people with direct knowledge of the technology.
Amazing.
Okay, so get this. Remember what we said about the valuation, valued at $377 million. They were trying to claim $700 million. They wanted $70 million in seed funds, and they charge $1 per transaction to be handled through their app. Toward the end of 2021, Nate was processing about 100 transactions a day. 2 people with direct access to the daily transaction data said.
Wait. So
they were
each transaction in their sort of theory was worth $7 million.
Yeah, basically, yes. Yes.
Sick.
To jumpstart growth, the startup launched a Nate Cash promotion in the 4th quarter of last year and took out ads on TikTok, television, and public transportation to tout the giveaway. Shoppers who downloaded the app and created a Nate account with their contact, shipping, and banking information were able to apply $50 towards a purchase on select websites, including Walmart, Best Buy, and Macy's. At one all-hands meeting in November, Nate's head of marketing, Thais Castella-Branco, responded to skepticism.
Another name right there.
responded to skepticism about the campaign by telling the team that the company's previous marketing efforts, including Facebook ads, were not pulling in the users they were hoping for, according to a person who was at the meeting. But this gets better. Branco went on to say giving free money to new users was an approach that had worked for payment firms like PayPal in the early days, one person said. PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel wrote in his book 0 to 1 that the payments company in late 1999 offered a $10 incentive to new customers and an additional $10 every time they referred a friend. The strategy was unsustainable on its own, he wrote, but the huge costs were sane for PayPal because the company had a clear path to profitability if it grew a large user base. Now, this is where it gets funny. After the promotion launched, transactions skyrocketed from around 100 a day to as high as 10,000 a day, according to 2 people who saw the daily transaction records. But many shoppers that signed up with Nate to get the $50 created multiple accounts using the same banking information but different emails and phone numbers.
One thing we didn't want to happen.
Some even took to Reddit to brag about exploiting the offer, with one person saying they bought almost $500 worth of goods by making new accounts. Eventually, Nate's payment team manually banned accounts that shared the same banking information. Team members painstakingly combed over a spreadsheet of transaction details to identify the perpetrator, said a person familiar with the process. I wonder if that was done in the Philippines too. And when the incentive ended around Christmas, daily transactions plunged back down to around 70 to 100, according to 2 people with direct access to the transaction data.
Imagine being one of the 70 to 100 rubes who was actually using Nate.
The loyalists, yeah.
Yeah.
Was
who
even-
were like,
it
this
was-
is the best app I've ever had.
It's also probably not even the loyalists. It's probably people who work there.
Oh, fuck, you're right.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It says it wasn't clear if Nate will succeed in raising more equity financing following its effort in March. According to one investor Nate approached, the company said that month that it had around $20 million left in the bank. And around that time, Nate received a total of $4 million in venture debt from Triple Point Capital, a startup financing firm, according to securities filing by the firm. Nate's loans...
VC shit is so funny because it's like, you can get thrown this amount of money and it's like, even after fucking up in every conceivable way, you're like, oh shit, we're down to our last... $20 million.
Nate's loans carry floating rate interest that's currently as high as 6.75%, which is on the low end of recent loans Triple Point made to other startups, the filing shows. So I think, Alice, I greatly appreciate your ability to do mental math and determine that they have decided their valuation is $7 million per individual transaction where they gross $1.
Yes, yeah. It's each of those transactions sort of adds $6.999 million worth of use value. And that's just how it is.
What's interesting to me about this is the way in which it kind of encapsulates so many things that we've talked about all in one example. And we're kind of like, I think we said that earlier in the episode, but I think the bullshit valuation is one thing that we've talked about a lot, like the extent to which companies will just have these absurd nonsense numbers. And that's how they're assessed in order to receive funding.
Getting the big valuation in the first place, getting it because something else has been successful in the same space and other VCs are chasing that success.
Sure. And then if it does go public, the insane share prices and things like that, the extent to which, none of this is actually based on earnings, or certainly not for the newer ones. For some of the more mature ones, like there is actually an assessment of, of earnings, like their quarterly earnings and things along those lines.
Yeah,
But
now
like,
the economy is real. VCs are like, wait a second, I need to. Are you just all texting back there to order me my jeans?
Well, I remember something that was really kind of enlightening to me when the debate was going on about Amazon moving its second headquarters to Queens, New York, and the extent that they had accepted basically like a sweetener from the state of New York. And it was something to the order of like, I don't know, 168 million or something along those lines of tax breaks. Basically, I did the math on my calculator app, and it came out to like $38,000 per employee that they were going to hire there. And it's just sort of like, I realize we're leaving the era of 0% interest rates and free money and all this shit, but it's just sort of like, I always struggle with the extent to which it feels like if you just gave people money to like do business shit or just to have their own, like to like improve their life circumstances, it would make such massive change.
No,
but you do give money out for free.
Yeah, exactly.
Just give it to morons for shit that doesn't work.
Yeah, this is the thing, right? We believe strongly in universal basic income without preconditions.
Very strongly.
For people who can get into a room with venture capitalists. Everybody else, you're on your own. And that's the most rational way of running an economy.
And the thing that gets me about this too is, as Milo was saying earlier, this isn't really providing a novel solution that isn't already done better by far more successful companies.
Mm-hmm.
As you pointed out, if you use Google Chrome or other similar browsers, you can save payment profiles, and it's pretty good at detecting when you need first name, last name, credit card number.
It fucks it up occasionally, but correcting it doesn't take very long. It usually only makes trivial errors.
It takes seconds. Or you could use, if they use Shopify or something, or Stripe, you have an account registered with them,
or
and when you
could
get
just eat the inconvenience of like a minute. How often do you fucking buy shit anyway that it's that big of a deal?
One reading of it is, and I don't know, like I don't know like a lot about the startup world now, so this is like very much based on like when I was much more interested in it a while ago, which is that you have these companies that sort of like produce this technology, not because they sort of want to be industry leaders, but because, and like, so many of them who sort of go through like the VC funding system, like what they want to do is kind of like reach a sort of level of valuation where they can kind of make a quick sale to like your Googles, your Facebooks, your Amazons, right? So like the point is not to sort of like develop a technology that necessarily has a kind of market demand or something where they sort of identify that, oh, this is like a real problem and like we're trying to kind of like come up with a solution for it. This, like a lot of other like startups, especially some that have like emerged, like we've talked about on the show, but like have emerged over the past few years, like it smells like a type of service that is purely designed for like the most cynical reasons, which in this case, like it sounds like they just wanted to sort of make a quick sale to a big company that could like absorb their product. And if they choose to use it, they can. If they choose not to, they don't. Like in so many, like if you read like profiles of startup founders, for example, or even if you kind of like look into, the sort of space where aspiring startup like founders like exist, so many of them they're not really trying to solve problems. They're not trying to be like, we like they've actually dropped the pretense of even wanting to improve the world in any way. For them, it's literally just the case of like, we're trying to build this product that will kind of like reach a huge level of like valuation and then sell it. And then just use that money to sort of like be an angel investor into other startups and like just taking advantage of a market, which as Nate, as you mentioned, as in Nate, not the company, Nate, the person, just to clarify that, as you sort of mentioned that, like, we're sort of exiting that period where, venture capitalists and like angel investors and stuff will be able to do that. So these are very much like the last remnants of a system that like for a very long time was very happy to kind of like burn its losses because it just had so much access to capital.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that what is frustrating about this is the extent to which it felt, it's gotten, call it easier to push back against it because you see just the obvious like lack of arrival of this miracle success that everyone's been promised. But I do genuinely feel like there were all these times during, call it the previous decade and change, where it was so obvious that, if you want to just like guy who barely passed fucking college economics 101 level of just do some Keynesianism and fucking put money in the economy that way, that was absolutely forbidden, anathema but you could basically do it for the dumbest shit on the planet via more or less the same mechanism of, taking out, whatever the fucking T-bills or how the fucking shit it works. Like, I don't know. I'm not Riley. I don't think about money. But like basically being granted 0% interest loans, in order to have access to financing that then would be given, out via VC stuff, or institutional investors who just make such enormous amounts of money through, various other things in the capital markets that they have these like more or less throwaway VC sort of gambling funds, like, the equivalent of bullshit crypto investing for these guys is like they have a fund, that's valued in hundreds of millions of dollars that they can dump into like any stupid doodad thing that promises it might do something, just in case it does wind up actually succeeding and they can.
It was a very funny and dumb time to live. I mean, my friend Titus and I often reminisce about in like 2017, 2018, there was a startup competitor to Uber in London called Viavan, where you could get a taxi.
Get in the back of a van.
Yeah, anywhere in Zone 2. So from any point in now Zone 2 in London is like pretty big. That's like easily like.
I mean, we're towards the northern end of Zone 2. I live towards the southern end of Zone 2. It's about 6 miles by road to get from where I live to here.
Yeah.
So pretty decent sized space.
Yeah. And you could get a taxi anywhere within 2 points in that zone for £6. No, it was £3. It was 3. Fuck.
Yeah, I mean,
just awesome.
Is that going to be financially viable?
Oh, they went so bankrupt.
Yeah.
They were burning that for like a year. And also you could get huge amounts of credit if you referred a friend. We're talking like £25 of credit for referring a friend. So me and Titus were like signing up all of our friends. I don't think I paid for a taxi for like 18 months.
It was a beautiful moment. For like, if you were on the kind of subreddits, or if you had the kind of friends who were good at collating all of these deals that just trickled down from companies that had too much VC money, that you could get away with so much shit that way.
If you knew someone who had like a fully remote job who just did those airline miles scams and was always flying, like that person would absolutely be able to hook you up with some ridiculous deal like this. And now it's
I don't think that guy exists anymore is the thing. Like I don't think that it's possible anymore to be the sort of person who just like is like, I have to fly to Dusseldorf this weekend specifically in order to keep my inexplicably obtained Lufthansa Platinum thing.
One of my friends from the American equivalent of year 7 moved to Boston and then went to Harvard, and I didn't connect with her again until we had finished college. And she, I think, worked in private equity and was one of those people. And for the longest time, her Facebook updates were just basically like, more or less, how to describe it? It was sort of like a Yelp page for all of the different business class lounges of the most fucked up, out of the middle of nowhere airports you could imagine.
Like, to get miles, I have to fly to Guam, but it has to be in 10 minutes. You know?
Yeah, I'm in the business lounge of Nursultan Nazarbayev International Airport, Almaty, reviewing the horse meat milkshake.
Yeah, there was a great moment for like most rational economic system in history.
Exactly. It's just sort of like you have one of those jobs where you genuinely make enough money that you could just buy like a full townhouse in San Francisco and just make insane. The amount of money that like anyone outside of that small coterie of people with those credentials will never see in their entire working lives, like the aggregate income across their lives. And you're like, God, the Moet Chandon and the Paramaribo airport fucking sucks. I don't understand it. Fucking Surinamese have no concept of European fine dining. Like,
just reading from Riley's LinkedIn page here.
So watching this stuff happen, I think what I want to kind of pivot towards is just the extent to which this normalized the sort of like, call it wage arbitrage with the developing world, because I feel like this is a thing that you always seem to learn about whenever there's a kind of automation, miracle startup. And the thing that kills me about it is that like, and credit to the information for doing all of the legwork on getting this, but when I read this stuff, it's always sort of like, wow, they lied to their investors. But then to me, it's always like, wow, they're fucking exploiting people to an immense degree. And it's like, basically to maintain this fiction that what they've developed works at all. And, it's basically call center jobs in countries like the Philippines. I don't know if there's a reason why it's shifted, because it used to be they would open these things and they would invariably try to automate them in India. And I don't know if it's because of time zone things, if it's because Indian wages have risen. I genuinely couldn't tell you.
I think it's because, India's gotten too expensive.
But like when it was
They used to do this shit in like Hong Kong and mainland China too.
Yeah, it's always looking for a new frontier, right?
And the thing I think that gets me the most about it is like in a country like the Philippines, you know, if a company is offering, I think like $5, $6, $7 an hour, like that is an attractive wage, but you realize that like these also are jobs that people get and are now going to lose when this company eventually goes under because it is a huge joke.
Yeah, it's terrible, humiliating, menial work, but it also is incredibly insecure because irrespective of whether they get criticized for it or not, it's not sustainable. It's going to collapse very quickly. And there's so much shit that's like underpinned by that kind of remote labor. And I think this is like a critique that we can make on the left too, is that when we had our little like fully automated luxury gay space communism moment, it was
our podcast had nothing to do with that. Please do not listen to any episodes before 2019.
Not doing any self-criticism.
Our version was heterosexual space communism.
That's right.
It's a very different thing.
With the fellas, I think we can identify that in some cases it came from some of the same impulses, which is to believe that your Pecora or whatever came out of a fucking replicator, you know?
Yeah, all of the fellas, we're all in the towel on the communist space station. Sorry, we're all wearing a towel on the communist space station. We're in the big communist space sauna, and we're all massaging each other in a heterosexual way.
That's right, whipping ourselves with like birch branches that we brought from Earth.
In a way, you could make the argument that we really wanted deep down was fully automated luxury homophobic communism.
Yeah, we brought this dog up here. He's like
Dog is
floating around.
making
He
very
doesn't know what
funny
to do.
homophobic joke. We're all wearing the felt sauna hats, but they also have like a space visor on them.
I think the thing that gets me about it is, it operates on, like, if we're going to do self-criticism about sort of belief that this stuff is inevitable.
As a trait.
Yeah, I mean, because it really is nice to believe, like, it's certainly relieving to believe that these technologies will develop well enough and, you know, quickly enough that they will be able to basically make machines perfectly perform menial labor.
Yeah,
and that
will deliver us our treats too.
Well, also, yeah, and I think, I mean, it also just sort of comes out of the moment. So, like, I remember when, like, that book came out, and there were, like, a few others that were, like, in that vein as well. And I think it was kind of like, and, you know, I think I just before we get into the main point, because, like, I think there are definitely some parallels with, like, crypto and blockchain and stuff like that, where I think it was very tempting to kind of like believe in like what the sort of like tech business guys were saying, right? And because like so much of the finance, because it was so dependent on like a type of financial structure that was dependent itself on like cheap access to money, and just the fact that like you had these companies that were sort of seemingly coming out of nowhere saying that they were like tech companies, and they like were able to master the algorithm to the point where like they were worth this amount of money, and where you have like governments that are like putting their faith and like orientating policy towards them. I think it's very tempting to kind of look at that and be like, yeah, well, we could like, how do we sort of use this? How do we use this to kind of like achieve left-wing goals, like progressive goals, whatever you want to call them? And I think those books are sort of an example of like, you know, kind of like seeding the settlement that, okay, this is like the world we live in, where like, you know, this type of tech is going to be here, but shouldn't the left be in control of it? And now we've sort of reached the point where it's like, oh, actually, none of this tech actually works. And like for kind of like right-wing governments who have sort of like had a lot of faith in that technology and like seen it as a way of subverting the act of doing governance, like they're in the shits because like they now have to sort of figure out what they do with like a state that they've basically destroyed. But like with the leftists, or like with some aspects of the left, those who sort of bought into this idea, I think there's this other crisis too about like, well, you know, how do we like, is there a way to sort of like reconcile the ambitions of like automated gay space luxury communism with like the idea that none of the actual like technology does what we felt they would do?
Yeah, the concern was, you know, if in the wrong hands the technology once deployed would not liberate people and make, you know, allow people more leisure and more compensation, but rather would just accrue even more grotesque profits to the people who, you know, put it in place, while everyone would continue a life of being underpaid and overworked. And what we're discovering is that all of that is true. However, the technology also does not work. Its only function, which allows it to function poorly, requires an even further exploited class of people, outside of they call it the metropole. And so that it's depressing because none of the guarantees, none of the promises, none of the ambitions were delivered. You just discover that shit doesn't work at all. However, I think the other thing too is it would be easy to believe that this stuff was ascendant and that it was going to, achieve all of its like most hyperbolic goals, because everywhere you looked, it seemed as though this stuff was everywhere. It was ubiquitous, like that Netflix and Spotify and Facebook and companies like that could make these insane investments. They could acquire small apps, small startups for hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. Netflix was doing everything you could possibly imagine. It had everything ever. It had all this new content. All this stuff was being generated. And what you discovered was that that wasn't because of any degree of financial success, growth, stability, even, achieving a break-even point. That was just that they had the infinity money cheat from SimCity, but also that was being handed to them by the government while the government slashed services that people depend on to a massive degree.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that, there was the big debate between the people who thought that you were going to keep your job and the people who thought that the robot was going to steal your job, but no one really predicted the third possibility, which is your job is now pretending to be a robot. The ultimate indignity.
Well, the thing is, it drove its whole next generation of whatever, because some of us seeing Netflix make all of this stuff decided that was what the future the left needed to control was going to be, and some of us started Quibi.
Well,
That's
right.
And
the thing that gets me too is think about how difficult it is for someone who has a startup, particularly a startup that would be in call it like a not brick and mortar sort of space, to achieve any kind of funding to grow a business, for example, that wasn't usurious, unless they were super tied in with that startup world already, which meant they probably, have the same pedigree and social circles and background as all this other stuff. So anything that would be genuinely novel, anything that would be genuinely DIY, your access to this infinity credit was basically zero. It just doesn't exist. Or if you did have it, it would be at Wonga interest rates. Meanwhile, the people who do have access to it are making stuff that doesn't work over and over and over again, lying about it, doing fully steamed hams levels of just
yeah, this technology works as the wheels fall off of our electric truck or whatever. Yeah,
and the thing that gets me about it is that I feel as though we're now entering a different phase, because I mean, as we're recording this, it's Monday night. I'm going to have this out at midnight tonight. Crypto markets are crashing massively, which is yet another example of sort of the economy becoming real. And this
this shit got me fucked up. I can't believe the crypto market is crashing. No one predicted this.
But the other point I would make too is that the crypto market, the crypto being sold as this, index funds and investing in equities isn't delivering huge returns, but you can take it to the moon with this bullshit that we bought a huge arena in America named after it. That level of once again ubiquitous everywhere, telling you this is the way to get ahead in the economy, that's collapsing at the same time that inflation in the U.S. is now, I think, was estimated almost 9%. So highest it's been since the early Reagan administration. You're seeing all this stuff. It feels like it's closing out this era where any of this the infinity money might have been used to correct the rot and fix the problems and make, even if you're just looking at that in a social democracy sense, not even huge structural change, that was an opportunity. It was completely squandered in favor of Quibi and Spencer Confidential.
What's really funny is that's how you get Peter Thiel, right? Is that he all of those guys started off as being a sort of quasi center left libertarian, right? And they fucked it up so badly that now all of them want a king. It's hysterical.
Although I don't necessarily know if that's true, Alice, to be honest with you, because everything I've read about Peter Thiel is that he was fully right-wing libertarian from earliest days.
Oh, well, maybe I'll retract that bit, but still. The fact that I could have believed it says a lot about our society.
Yeah, you're not entirely wrong in the sense that, Nate, you're right in the sense, I've seen a few videos of his, from his Stanford days where he's very much quite overtly like right wing in like a very sort of social sense. He doesn't go as far as, I think like the whole like Curtis Yarvin thing is like, I want a king. Teal doesn't go quite that far, but his like definitely over time, as he's kind of realized, or as all these tech guys have kind of realized that like the honeymoon is, or like the kind of like rainbow period is over, and crucially that they fucked up, and like, you know, their kind of observation is very much a rejection of democracy as a whole, right? So, and you know, it's not just Teal. You can sort of see that with Zuckerberg in the sense of like viewing the metaverse like not as like a commercial product in and of itself, but as this kind of like new universe that like should have its own politics kind of embedded into it. Like Dorsey and like Web3 very much is like not just like a commercial thing. It is very much like a political decision based on like certain political epithets that he has. A lot of these tech guys, so like you can see with the movement like a lot of these tech guys have, is one where like they have kind of like had to accept that they fucked up. They've also had to accept for like the mechanisms that would have sort of bailed them out, and crucially like what led to their ascension, which is like the post 2008 like the moments of post 2008, like that's no longer sort of feasible. So their thing is very much like, oh well, the only way to sort of like stay on top, and the only way to sort of like stay not even like relevant in a way that people like, but to stay like, you know, to not cede any power, is to kind of like push for the entire like rejection of democracy and of itself.
Having destroyed democracy, well, it's clear democracy doesn't work.
Right. Basically. And then I think that like with crypto, like the crypto stuff I think the reason why that was so appealing to a lot of these tech guys is that it kind of felt like a way in which you could subvert it, but without like seeming or sounding like totalitarian, right? So it's the idea that like, oh, if crypto and Web3 sort of expand, then people will naturally see this as like a better settlement, and all they'll want is like managers, right? People who can kind of like keep the system running, but they can kind of build their own sort of crypto cities, and they can buy their own crypto traffic lights or whatever the fuck. And now that that's fucked up, right, I imagine what's probably going to happen now that all the apes are gone is that they'll just be a lot louder in their sort of like their assertion that like democracy is not like a functional system for managing human societies. And like in order to do that, especially to like governments who have sort of given away most of the powers of the state, is, oh well, you know,
philosopher king,
those governments like only have one source of like, you know, authority left to turn to, right?
Elon Musk philosopher.
That's right. It's very much the guy in the fedora holding the samurai sword, you know, claiming that like while you went to parties, he was studying the blade.
Yeah, while you funded £3 taxis within Zone 2, I was reading Mencius Moldbug, and now I think that we need like a neo-reactionary
about that.
Yeah,
something I wanted to add in though also is, I just was thinking about this as you were discussing like the sort of the collapse of these kind of farcical notions of how this stuff was going to reinvent whatever, is that so much of what you might take as like received wisdom that you know acquire through watching the news and reading the news, you seeing advertisements, all this stuff, was telling everybody who was, you know, unsatisfied with their sort of financial station that the solution was to invest in crypto, that crypto was like this new frontier, it was going to change everything. Like in the future, you know, like every city will have its own currency that's done on the blockchain or some bullshit. And like no one can really explain the use case because no one's really being demanded to explain the use case. It's just taken as a given. And so
it's also so funny because crypto, you know, back in the day, it's one of those things that did have a use case, and they quickly got rid of the use case to turn it into something and say like,
the use case is buying drugs on the dark web.
Yeah, and child pornography. But suddenly we're too good for child pornophy. You know, it's got to be a financial. You got to buy an ape. You know,
that's right.
At least the child pornography was real.
Well, the thing about supposedly the drugs were real too, but the thing about it is
child pornography never collapsed an economy in a South American state.
Well, the thing about it is with the point I was trying to make though is that like a lot of people got hoodwinked and are gonna, you know, felt they were more or less told you're an idiot if you don't get in on the ground floor on this.
By Mark Wahlberg even. Which
take out loans at whatever interest rate you can get the money at to buy crypto, and you'll, you know, tenfold increase your investment. And now these people are
buying fucking child pornography. You're a sucker. You should be taking that crypto and buying apes. I'm Mark Wahlberg, investment advisor.
Like,
Was it Matt Damon? Not important. Basically the same guy.
I just feel bad because a lot of people got hoodwinked, and even if we can look at the people who made these decisions, you're like, you're a fucking idiot. Like anything comparable to this, the knock-on effects are like people in their lives are going to suffer too. Their families are going to suffer. Their communities are going to suffer. And like, that's the part about it that drives me nuts, is that it's not even like people should have known better. People in positions of influence should have been more responsible. It's like, at no point has anyone been like, hey guys, could you please explain what the fuck any of this is actually supposed to do? Because like, it just looks cool. It has cool icons. That's literally it. Other than that,
one of the few scams where like the people in charge of the scam really weren't much smarter than the people falling for it. Like, a lot of them genuinely believed it was going to work.
What's really sad about a lot of it, like, and I know a few people who like did investing. I don't know how much they've done or like how much they've now lost or, whatever. But like they did kind of like invest into crypto, and like when I sort of asked like, why are you doing? I'm like, just genuinely out of interest, like, why are you doing this? Because it feels to me like this is like very, very risky, and as someone who's quite risk averse, like I wouldn't do this. And for them, it was very much like it wasn't.
Hussein.
Yeah, they love Mark Wahlberg films. No, what they were kind of saying is that like, oh, this is the vibe that I got was very much like they felt hopeful in like being part of like, seeing all this happen and seeing like people kind of like at least say that they were kind of benefiting from it. These are people like who like I went to school with, right? So they have these jobs that are kind of like low, fairly low stagnant paid, like white collar jobs. The future is not necessarily the one that like was necessarily what they envisioned for, like, when we were all in school. But for them, it was very much like they felt that they were investing in a future, and what like the crypto, what like these kind of like the online crypto world did, and crucially all the PR firms that like have like I don't know about anyone else, but like all the PR emails I get are all about cryptocurrency. So like these PR agencies are were very, very, I don't want to say they were very good at it, but they went all in on just like promoting crypto as like, the inevitable future, like, something that like if you don't if you don't get in on it, it's not the fact that you're like missing out a good opportunity, it's that you're sort of like foregoing your future at a time when like there isn't really any other option, or it feels like there isn't really any other option. So the fact that like this cryptocurrency, like what the crash has done and what the kind of subsequent crashes will do is like really kind of like, it will really sort of degrade like a lot of the senses of hope that people who don't really have hope in anything else have. And like I've been worrying about this for like quite a long time, like what the political consequences are when you have like a much younger generation for whom like they are aware that like the state doesn't really back them. They can't really like afford families or buy houses or like do all the sort of things that like were kind of conventional of people their age. And suddenly this thing that like they did have a lot of hope in crashes like almost immediately. Like what are they left with, and like what happens after that?
Do we say that they are
3 words for you
by the ghosts of lost futures?
Prime Minister Matt Hancock.
That would that would be it. That's right.
Well, I guess in wrapping up, all I can say is I too am often disappointed when people are taken in by the promises of something called Nate. So I'm not surprised that
saying this to my wife when she's mad
that the Nate app.
We're not the only person who's been taken in by the promises of Nate.
I just realized something funny that was very just as a slight little detail before we close, is that the Nate app worked on iOS, so that presumes it's only on iPhone, which presumes you have to send a link to a thing to go to the app. But also, like, if you were too lazy to fill in your information to purchase something and you're using iOS, you can just use Apple Pay. You literally click a button twice and you can pay for it.
It really
so
is.
effectively, they've created a thing like, what? Do you guys want to use our app? It does shit way worse and slower, and it's harder than just fucking clicking the side of your phone. And it costs you $1 every single time. But please do,
but
because
you're creating jobs in the Philippines.
How could this have failed?
You and 99 other people today will grant us $100 of revenue. We're worth nearly $1 billion. How could it have failed? Well,
Impossible to say.
If it hadn't failed, we wouldn't have had an episode this week. We wouldn't have been able to explore
Yeah,
the
we would have
state-
simply have given up. We just wouldn't have
That's
done
right.
any content.
we would have stopped podcasting. So here's the thing.
Yeah, we've
Here's the
actually
thing.
run out of ideas. It's a screeching in up to the deadline every week. We're just waiting for something to hit our email
So
inbox.
basically, the haters and losers, what they need to do is take over Bitcoin and shit app companies and make them solvent, and then we will have to retire.
yeah,
That's
then we'll
right.
be owned.
We will
Yeah.
we will be incredibly owned.
It's a
But
podcast
until-
about booms, and now we're in a bust. And, I don't know.
Fuck. But before we go, I want to pass it around the table if people have anything to plug. Milo, have you got anything to plug? Alice, Hussein, plugs?
No, Callis, if she's got anything to plug.
No.
You're not ready for that conversation.
Just the regular stuff. Well, there's your problem. Kill James Bond. Yeah, listen to those.
I'm just like a full-time wife guy now, so I just want to promote my wife. That's all I'm gonna do from now on. But if you want to in my previous non-wife guy phase, I did have a podcast called 10,000 Posts. It's now renamed to 10,000 Wives. You can follow that at 10K Postpod on Twitter, and we have Patreon and everything.
Yeah, and I do Masters of Our Domain with Phoebe Roy, who also does 10,000 Posts.
I also have a show called What a Hell of a Way to Die, and we have a Patreon for Trashfuture. $5 a month gets you a bunch of bonus content, one free episode.
As inflation wears on, it becomes a better and better deal week by week.
And if you want 2 Britnologies a month, we offer that at the $10 tier. And if we reach our next Patreon goal, we will invest in an app that promises the ability to travel through time, and we can change the American English lingo used to talk about product placements in movies.
Yeah.
And so instead of being called plugs, it'll be called pegging, and Alice will be
Pegging your
so
wife, yes.
fucking happy.
Yeah. Each
Right.
week on the Trashfuture Patreon, you'll receive a limited edition figurine, which over time builds into a fantastic collection of apes.
But anyway, otherwise, it's been Nate, Milo, Alice, and Hussein. Thank you so much for listening, and we will speak to you next
Thank
week.
you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.